Distinguished dignitaries on the dais and friends, a very good evening to all of you. I know it's been a pretty long and exhaustive day, and not much energy is left either to speak or to listen. But still, thank you for being here. The topic we have been discussing since since afternoon, fake narratives. I'm heading India's premier media training institute, and this is one issue we have been dealing with it. For the last 3 decades, I've been in the media. I've worked across the media spectrum, and I've been dealing with this issue. I just want to share a couple of my thoughts on it and some experiences. I'll be short, I'll be brief. First of all, I don't believe that fake narrative is something new. It's been there since time immemorial. It's been there when you had a fake narrative about Mata Sita during Ramayana. You had a fake narrative when you referred to a fake news, when you talked about Ashwathama Hatha Kunjara. That was also fake news. So fake news has a history, and of course, in other cultures and civilizations also we had this fake narrative. I will just begin with an episode which recently happened. A few days back, a couple of my students came with a request that they want to celebrate Ganpati. I said, fine. I gave them permission on the condition that they would not disturb the class. It would happen only either before the class or after the class or during lunch. They agreed. They did bring an idol of Ganpati, installed it, did puja. Before 10 o'clock, the classes started. During lunchtime, between 1 and 2, they went back to their classes. After the classes, in the evenings, when even the library is closed, they came back and they did some bhajans. And then the narrative started. That under the Modi government, India's premier media training institution is now producing bhajan singers, and journalists are now being religiously indoctrinated, and this all being done by a BJP appointed Director General, and that narrative, and they forget that, and they were supported by friends from across, I won't call across the road, our esteemed neighbor next door, our friends from Jawaharlal Nehru University. They were aiding and abetting this narrative. And without remembering that Durga Puja is very popular and famous in JNU campus, where, actively it is the AISF and SFI cadres and ISA cadres who participate in it. But then this narrative has to be built. My worry is that some of my students have now asked me permission day after tomorrow to hold a celebratory discussion on the Supreme Court decision on Article 377. I'm worried about the narrative the day after, about what we are going to do at IIMC. So this is the kind of narrative that is being deliberately. You see, I have always believed that as a newsman, fake news can come not just because of any ideological bias or there are reasons beyond it also. That includes that there is an increasing absence of ground reporting. There is no research being done in media. There is this paucity of funds due to which now the entire media or journalism has been confined to newsroom discussions and debates. The ground reporting is just not there. People are not equipped, to handle certain issues. They have no specialization, and they are just being sent across. So these are issues which are responsible to a great extent for fake news. But fake narrative is something that's being deliberately done. It's done to sabotage not just any political party, but states, countries, nations, civilizations. And this has happened. We have seen it happen in Iran. I'm not talking about the present regime. I'm talking about the Shah's regime in Iran. What had happened, what kind of narratives were spread about the Shah and his family. What happened in Syria, Iraq, Tunisia. These countries have been destroyed, devastated, because a narrative was built that whatever was happening there was the worst thing to happen. Everything was exaggerated beyond a point. And some incidents, stray incidents here and there. So mountains were made out of molehill, and a resentment was created against the regime to such an extent that people took up arms. And then today, when you see Iraq, when you see Syria, you see nations, civilizations which have been destroyed forever. I don't see any recovery in the near future for any of these countries. The way they have been, Afghanistan, the way these countries have been destroyed. And that's all because of some vested interests starting a narrative which was, and I see, I'm sorry, I may be, some people may say I may sound very skeptical, but I see that happening here. That a deliberate narrative is being built up where everything, it's no more about any particular government. Everything about this country is bad. Everything in this country is, this country is going to the dogs. And whatever is happening in any field, no reference to anything positive, no reference to truth. Truth is the biggest casualty in this entire narrative, where nobody is talking about what's happening, the kind of changes that are taking place. Nobody is talking about that. It's as if there is in this whole country, which I don't see anywhere. I don't see it. I'm sorry. I don't see Islamophobia in this country. I don't see it. It's there in the media. It's there in the narrative. But I don't see it on the streets, in my office, in my, personal space, in my, where I live. I don't see that. But then the kind of narrative that is being built is as if there is a, tremendous Islamophobia in this country, which is not there. I don't see. I have so many friends. I don't see that happening. But then it is there. People are talking about it, but where is it? That I don't see. The hatred against minorities, the hatred against Dalits, I don't see it on the streets. Some stray incident is picked up, and then this entire, there was a reference made to mob lynching here. Now, mob lynching apparently was due to fake news, and it was mostly related to kidnapping and all that, but it was linked with, there were a couple of incidents related to, cow slaughter. That cannot be denied. But then there were also incidents where, like in Rajasthan, there was a custodial death. Now, custodial death is a crime totally different, which was projected as a mob lynching due to, owing to, whatever beef and all that. There was a case of mob lynching, this chocolate case, which was referred about some engineers, Google engineers going there and giving chocolates to children. Now, those boys belong to a minority community, and the people who lynched them also belong to the same community. But then that was added on to this list of mob lynching and said that, look, this is the mahal, there is an atmosphere of hatred. I don't see that. The same is the narrative that is being built in about Kashmir. I don't know. I deliberately took my family this time for vacation last month for 15 days just to be sure, because I have always been a journalist. I said that if I start going by that narrative, let me go and see. And I saw that very day, it had happened only a day after, the death of Shujat Bukhari. And the headline on the so-called national news channels was Kashmir on the edge. And I was traveling freely around Srinagar. I didn't see anybody on the edge except those sitting on the edge of Dal Lake, just to enjoy the weather. There were a couple of streets in downtown, Shopur and all that, where some boys, maybe they... Now, this is not saying that everything about Kashmir is normal. But it's not the way it's being Kashmir is on the boil. I did not see it on the boil, honestly. I traveled crisscrossed Kashmir in the 15 days. I mean, that 136 kilometer by whatever, Major Arya said. I didn't see that kind of a situation. Anantnag, some places, downtown, some places. But apart from that, I didn't see that kind of... Yes, when you speak to the people, some kind of... Again, thanks to this narrative, there is a narrative which is there. But I don't see that violence, I don't see that this thing. Rather, the common man, including the taxi driver I spoke to, was again talking about कुछ हमारी बातें हैं, कुछ हमारी बातें, हम कहाँ जाएंगे आपको छोड़कर. That was the general narrative, but yes, they had a grievance. Anyway, we are not getting into the merits of the case. But what I wanted to say is, what is this narrative being built? And how it is being built? That worries me. Because it is impacting our society, which is the topic of today. It is creating a scenario where you are trying to say that, look, this is... And these narratives are young boys, because I am heading an institute of, media students. I see my students being influenced by them. I had one of my students saying that, sir, why are we keeping it by so much of force? Let us leave them. I said, what? Leave what? Do you have any understanding of what it is all about? And I can see that is because of that narrative, that they have started feeling, yes, maybe what Arundhati Roy said is correct. Because a narrative has been created. The same is true of so many narratives which are being created. And imagine, not many of you may be aware that and I'm not saying it by identifying any particular community or anything, that every journalist covering the national media in Kashmir is from Kashmir, belonging to a particular community. And you get the same narrative on all the channels in all newspapers. No, these are being deliberately created. Are we looking into this? That worries me. I'm worried about a narrative where the directions, where the guidelines are very clear, that you cannot name a rape victim. So the whole country covered extensively, the whole global media covered Nirbhaya. Nobody came to know about her name, but the whole world is aware of the name of the Kathua rape victim. That's narrative building. Where you say that, look, this is the name of the victim. But you're not supposed to be revealing. Nirbhaya, you don't know. Nirbhaya means fearless. What's her real name? How many of you know? A couple of journalists may be knowing. Otherwise, nobody knows. But then, everybody knows the name of the Kathua rape victim. Why that name was given? Now that's narrative building, which has an impact on the social fabric of the country, where it is being projected that one community is being victimized. Now that is where I think that we need to be aware. There is need for awareness. This is a deliberate, planned act which is being done by vested interests who are out to destabilize this country, to tear apart the social fabric of this country, and which is going to have tremendous impact. I'm sorry to say, but every time there is there's this huge, I know what is this, I'm also concerned about pollution in Delhi. I'm also concerned. I'm also concerned about, chemical colors being used, how it can affect the skin, how chemicals used in Durga idols can, create, can pollute the water. But I don't know whether you ever gave a thought that why is it that festivals of only one community creates all the problems? I don't know. So, shouldn't we be thinking? I'm sure the other experts are going to talk about the impact on economy and all that, but as somebody who has been connected to the society as a media person for the last 3 decades plus and as a teacher for the last 2 decades, I am concerned when I see my students being divided on lines which I would never imagine. Today in the media is a polarized world. Either you are a Bhakt or you are somebody else. If you talk about the government, any good initiative, or if you talk about, forget the government, about the country's interest, if you say, well, Doklam, we stood up to the Chinese, you will say, Bhakt. What is this kind of narrative? You cannot talk about your country. Is it a crime to talk about your country? People are, people want to be politically correct. So saying that means you are not being, you are unfashionable. Now, being religious means you are no more fashionable. But then somebody else has an identity mark. He wears a cap. He wears a turban. That's identity. When you do it, it's communal. That affects me as a teacher because that's dividing my students. So, friends, I know that, there are limitations of time and the organizer is repeatedly looking at the watch. I don't blame him for that. I would have loved to share more, but certainly I'm sure we all want to listen to the other speakers also. Thank you for inviting me, but my only suggestion to you is that, to all my friends, and not just to media persons, not just to, my only thing is that let us be at least aware of the fake narrative to begin with. I think that's to begin with, the solution begins there when you are able to identify the fake from the real. What is fake, what is real? Why should somebody be talking like that? Can we be a little more analytical? Can we put things in little more in perspective? I'm sure initiatives like the one taken by this organization, we need to do more talking, we need to have wider discussion, wider awareness. Otherwise, I'm worried. I again say I'm otherwise a very positive person. I often say that my blood group is B positive. I have no other option but to be positive. I am positive, but I'm a little worried, honestly, that the kind of narrative that's going on, I'm sure more such workshop will be able to create more awareness about it. Thank you for inviting me.